Welcome back to Nonprofit CEO Spark. I'm Marcia Beckner, and today we're kicking off with a hot take I've been sitting with for a long time. Staff conflict isn't normal. It's a leadership choice to tolerate a low-trust environment. Now, I know that sounds a little harsh and maybe even confrontational, but stick with me. I know this is true because I lived through one of the most painful and ultimately transformational chapters of my executive director career. There was a season when my staff split into two factions. Our culture unraveled, fundraising tanked, and I found myself standing at a crossroads, facing decisions I never thought I'd have to make. But what happened next changed everything for me, my team, and the organization we built from the ground up. I'm going to get a little vulnerable today because I've never shared this story quite like this. But if it helps even one person to know that when it comes to culture, you get what you tolerate, it will be worth it. Welcome to Nonprofit CEO Spark, the podcast for bold leaders ready to navigate growth and change with energy and confidence. I'm Marcia Beckner, nonprofit founder, former executive director, and culture strategist with nearly 20 years in the social impact world. Each week, I help nonprofit leaders stop spinning out, set boundaries, and design inclusive cultures where all staff can thrive. If you're ready to reignite your leadership without sacrificing your well-being, hit subscribe and let's spark your next chapter together. So here's the story. In 2007, I founded My Lifeline Cancer Foundation, born from a deeply personal vision to make sure no one facing cancer ever felt the isolation that I experienced. See, I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer in my 20s, and those months of loneliness really shaped me. I became determined to build the kind of connection and community I wish I'd had. So with a small group of incredible friends, we formed our first board of directors, and I stepped in as the executive director, learning everything from scratch. Over the years, we grew nationally and created a meaningful impact. We built one of the first social networks designed specifically for people with cancer and their families. It was a simple, supportive space where they could communicate online during treatment and receive the emotional and logistical support they desperately needed. But eventually, life shifted, and for personal family reasons, I needed to step back from the day-to-day leadership. It was time for us to hire a CEO who could take the organization into the next chapter. I transitioned into a board role so I could stay connected to the mission, focusing on fundraising and strategic guidance while giving the new leader room to grow the organization. Year one went smoothly. The culture felt strong, and I trusted the foundation we had built. And then year two happened. Our small staff team, just 7 people, quietly split into 2 conflicting factions, 2 groups who avoided one another. 2 groups who didn't talk to each other, 2 groups who walked into meetings bracing for battle. Instead of addressing the conflict, the CEO avoided it. Resentments grew and communication shut down. People retreated into their own corners. Psychological safety didn't erode overnight, it evaporated. And here's what most leaders underestimate. Donors can sense dysfunction internally. Partners can feel the disconnection, and then the mission feels it most. Our fundraising began declining. Our community partners sensed instability, and for the first time in our 9-year history, we ended the year in the red. And the numbers weren't even the hardest part. The hardest part was watching the organization and the mission we cared so deeply about get pulled under by conflict that no one knew how to stop. I lay awake more nights than I can count, asking myself, do I intervene or do I stay in my board lane? Is this my responsibility to fix? Is the organization strong enough to survive? Leadership isn't heavy because of the responsibilities. It's heavy because of the emotional labor of knowing something is breaking and not knowing if you should be the one to step in or if you'll even be able to. Eventually, this truth became unavoidable. The CEO wasn't able to fix the deep cultural divides. So the board, including me, reached this crossroads. Either we continue tolerating the toxic status quo where everyone was miserable, or make a bold and scary intervention. We made the painful decision to ask the CEO to resign. It was messy, it was emotional, and it felt like a failure, even though now that I look back, I see it as a learning and growth opportunity. Because here's the truth I learned the hard way. Hiring the wrong leader is recoverable, but tolerating staff drama is not. So I reluctantly stepped back in to try and stabilize the organization, and what came next changed everything. Financially, we were in trouble, and at the start of the new year, we had to make the incredibly hard decision to let 2 staff members go. I cared deeply about them both, and it felt awful, but the numbers just didn't give us any other option. It was painful and heartbreaking all at once, but it was necessary. And then something amazing happened. When conflict leaves the building, people breathe again. Communication opens. Trust begins to rebuild. Decision-making becomes clearer, and the mission begins to move forward again. With a smaller but aligned team, we accelerated our program dramatically. We rebuilt donor confidence. We regained our footing and rode the momentum. And that same year, after our hardest setback, we had the best fundraising year in our history. So why do I tell you this story? I don't tell it because it's comfortable. In fact, I tell it because it's true. And I know some of you can relate to this. And because nonprofit CEOs and executive directors often blame themselves for conflict they didn't create, and they feel powerless to fix. But you are not powerless. Here's the leadership truth most people never hear early enough. It's a healthy, aligned team that precedes fundraising success, not the other way around. You cannot out-hustle a fractured culture, you cannot out-strategize low trust, and you cannot out-fundraise drama. The moment you refuse to tolerate a low-trust environment, everything can change. And in my case, it didn't just change things internally, it unlocked the next chapter of our growth. Here's the part that still gives me chills. During that year, when our culture transformed and fundraising skyrocketed again, something else happened. New possibilities started opening up, ones we'd never even imagined before. With a healthy team, a stable culture, and donor confidence restored, I finally had the clarity and space to think, how do we maximize the impact for the cancer community we exist to serve? We began exploring partnerships, collaborations, and ways to expand our reach. And then the biggest opportunity arrived at our front door. We decided to merge with a global cancer support network. It was bold, it was aligned, and it was the right next step. And because our team culture and balance sheet were both healthy again, we were ready. After the merger, our impact multiplied, our visibility expanded, and our reach grew. We had reached the ultimate vision of becoming sustainable. What this story illustrates is that culture isn't some internal project we'll get to when there's extra money or extra time. It's something that needs tending every day, especially when things don't feel right, when finances are in the red, and when staff drama pops up at the worst possible time. So, if you remember one thing, remember you can't afford to ignore culture because it shapes your fundraising, your retention, your reputation, your team energy, all of it. Culture is the foundation that everything else rests on. It's not a side project. It's the growth engine of world-changing impact you're meant to make. So what does this mean for you? If your staff is locked in conflict, if you're absorbing every emotion in the building, if you're constantly mediating drama instead of leading, that's not, quote, just how it is in the nonprofit world. No, that is not what we normalize. Conflict is solvable, drama is preventable, and low trust is reversible. But only when leaders stop avoiding what's comfortable and start leading from clarity, not exhaustion. Now, during the COVID years, I published a memoir about my cancer experience, and how it completely reshaped the trajectory of my life, and in some incredibly difficult ways, and in some unexpectedly beautiful ones. The book is called You Are Meant for Great Things, my story of turning setbacks into stepping stones. And in it, I share the journey of starting, growing, and eventually merging my nonprofit. And yes, all the failures and missteps and messy middle moments that came with it. Because failure isn't the point. What matters is getting back up, trusting your gut, and remembering that you always have a choice. You can find your way through any roadblock and walk confidently in a new direction. Sorry, I'm getting a little emotional. So my passion now, and the reason I started this podcast, is to help you, to help nonprofit leaders stay healthy, grounded, and genuinely happy at work. And the fastest path there is leading a mission-aligned team that's willing to row in the same direction. It's not perfection, it's a process, and you deserve a lot of grace as you navigate it. Being an executive director was the hardest role I've ever had and the most rewarding. It sounds like what people say about parenthood, right? So let this podcast be your reminder. You're not alone. You're not behind, and you're exactly where you're meant to be. You stepped into this role knowing it came with a lot of responsibility and a fair amount of chaos. So my plea to you is balance the hard stuff with the fulfillment, the joy of leading a community, the pride of inspiring people to be their best, and the magic of seeing your mission come alive through your team. I might be going on a little tangent there, but the context matters. We cannot keep treating staff drama like it's just the way nonprofits are because we don't have enough resources. No, a healthy culture is the engine that generates those resources. And when your team is aligned and energized, know that fundraising improves, impact expands, and everything becomes a win-win. Here's your spark plug shift for the week. Ask yourself, what's the one thing we're avoiding talking about as a team right now? Then pick just one moment this week to open that conversation. Don't let small frustrations grow into big problems. Release the pressure early so it doesn't become a catastrophe. And the best part about this is that the shift costs nothing and it changes everything. If this episode resonated with you, if you're carrying staff conflict that feels too heavy, you now know that I've personally walked that road. And my mission today with Culture Cares is to help other nonprofit leaders to walk through it too, with poise and confidence. You can do this. Find the full transcript and today's resources at culturecares.com/11. And don't forget to download my free guide, 4 strategies to reduce burnout, unify your teams, and build a culture that lasts. It's at culturecares.com/guide. Until next time, stay centered, stay courageous, and keep your culture spark alive. Thanks for listening to today's episode of Nonprofit CEO Spark. If you're ready to turn burnout into boundaries and build a healthy, happy culture where everyone, including you, can thrive, visit culturecares.com to learn how I support nonprofit organizations like yours. If this episode brought you value, share it with a fellow leader navigating stress and overwhelm. And remember, you are meant for great things, and you don't have to burn out to prove it. Until next time, keep leading with courage and confidence.